Greetings. Welcome back to this episode of Theologically Driven. This week, we're going to consider how to run a kids ministry training seminar. So I'm joined by Riley Woodfin. Riley, thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be with you, Phil.
Yeah, so you are the kids director at our church here, and we recently put on a type of training seminar just to help all the workers get on the same page. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your role here at IC?
Yeah, we've done a couple of those seminars, and as far as the sort of the evolution with me and getting into the role that I'm in now, I got here in the summer of 2021, and I was sort of tasked with working on an internship our church does in the summer and working with church planning stuff. But as things evolved and staff turned over, there was sort of a need and an opening to help, administrate the children's ministry. So that's been, I think I started that January of 2023. And so basically what that role looks like is we have church members that are all sort of oversee different areas of our ministries. So there's a guy, he's actually on staff, that oversees the senior high, another guy that oversees the middle school. There's somebody that kind of looks over the Sunday schools. So there's people that are over all these different areas, but there needed to be somebody who kind of kept an eye on all of it and kept it calibrated and working together well.
Yeah, especially at the scale that we're doing some of these things. It's good to have somebody staff side who has access to internals and things like that who can keep an eye on everything.
Yeah, so it's been pretty cool. I mean, we have, I think it's around 100 people that are involved in those age groups that I just mentioned, and that's not counting nursery workers. That would grow it a little bit more. But as far as those that are in, maybe we could call them teaching type roles, it's around 100 from the 2 years old up through the senior high. And a lot of those people have been doing those jobs longer than I've been in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's actually been a pretty cool opportunity to learn from those people that have been teaching an elementary Sunday school class for literal decades.
Yeah. Do you happen to know how long is like the longest serving person?
I believe our longest serving is a Sunday school teacher in our fifth grade, Miss Lucy. I think she just passed 50 years.
That's what I thought it was up there. I didn't know if it was 50 or
Which
not.
is certainly longer than I've been in the world, just to clarify.
Right, yeah, definitely.
So.
Might be, it's not both of us combined. But anyway, so let me know. So why did we decide to do a training seminar?
Yeah, I think the way that came about is when I first got into the role, for a lot of the reasons we were just talking about. You know, there's people that have been doing this a long time and were probably, and at least in their area, more qualified than I was to lead because they just knew what was going on, right? So one of the first things that I did when I started is I tried to set up meetings with everybody that was heading up one of these areas just to understand. I mean, some of my questions were as simple as, so what do you do? Mm-hmm. What does it look like in third grade Sunday school? What does a class look like? And as I worked through these meetings, it was, somebody over here had a great idea or a great process they were using that nobody else knew about. Or somebody over here had a concern that maybe everybody should have had. Or, this person has developed a resource that would be useful for a lot of people. And so we had these pockets all over the place in our kids ministry of good ideas and things to avoid and resources to use. And I'm thinking to myself, somehow or another, we got to get everybody on the same page where we're sharing these things. And when we're talking about, 100 people, it's how are you ever I could email them, I could send an email out, but that's not going to be effective. Even if people read it, getting it to implementation is the next level. I could try to talk to people one-on-one and bring these things up. But it just seemed like we needed some sort of an official, let's get together and let's talk about a few key priorities within our children's ministry and really target those to move forward. And that's where sort of the idea of doing this seminar, which is nothing new. People do these kinds of things all over the place. But as far as really seeing the benefit or even the need for doing one here, that it kind of grew out of those grassroots conversations with the people that were in the trenches.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And two, we probably should say this can apply to any children's ministry. You want whoever's volunteering, no matter if that's 100 workers, like in your case, or 10 workers, you want that. You want everyone to be on the same page and moving towards the same goal. Because, like that pocket idea you're talking about of, people are kind of doing their own thing in some places. Something may be working well, but then someone may be kind of spinning their wheels over here. And you really want the group to help move everyone forward.
Yeah, especially newer people.
Yeah.
When you have somebody who's been doing it for decades and has sort of been honing their craft that long, and somebody who's just getting started, putting those people in the same room, even if it's not for a session, some of our stuff we'll talk about coming up here is just putting people in the same room to think about how they could do it better. It doesn't even have to be content I've prepared, but just putting those people there so they can compare notes is helpful.
Yeah, good. So let's talk about the seminar itself. What were some of the topics you wanted to include?
Yeah, to me, the base level has to always be the base level. It has to be the philosophy of children's ministry. So as I'm thinking about, people that are listening to this, thinking about whether it's something they should do or not, I would say this: just ask yourself, if you went through the people that are involved in your children's or even your teens ministry, and you ask them, like, why do we have this ministry? What are we trying to accomplish? If you're a bit tentative on whether they would be able to answer that question well, then you probably need to do something like this, because you really want people to know why they're doing what they're doing. Otherwise, I think particularly in children's ministry, it can turn into babysitting. It can turn into filling a slot in the schedule because this is just what we do. So that was the number one thing. The first session we did, and the first one of these two that I've been a part of, was really get into philosophy of why do we have children's ministry here in the first place. And we even broke that out into some other areas as well. So why do we have primary and junior church? We had a session along those lines as well, and trying to just get into the weeds. And our youth group leaders joined us for the second one. And I know their leadoff session was something along the lines of a philosophy of youth ministry. And so you really want to be square at that foundational level and everybody be aiming for the same thing. And you have to start that way in establishing it. So that was big for us. But I mean, we were all over the board with stuff too. So, we if we have a new procedure that we wanted to introduce, where better are you going to be able to do that than with everybody in the same room? So, say for instance, this coming summer when we do our move up, when all the kids move up to their new grade, we've got some new plans to sort of try to get a chance for the parents to connect with the teachers, and it's going to be a change from our routine. Okay, so let's, during this seminar then, get all the teachers in the same room and say, here's what those changes are going to be. You can get feedback that way and make sure that everybody's on the same page heading in. So I think new procedures or new tools. Like we had an opportunity to put all of our curriculum that we had in print online in PDF form and create a shared folder. So what did we do? We got everybody in the same room and said, here's the login, here's how you do it, here's how you can download it, here's where it's stored, so that everybody knew how to get to that curriculum. Helps with subs, a lot of things to have that online. And I mentioned a second ago the brainstorming session. In particular, we had the preschool teachers get together. We all have memory verses we're supposed to do. We all have different things and storybooks or lessons that the way they teach them. And everybody had kind of their own angle on it. And as I was talking to these people in these one-on-one meetings that I was doing, I'm hearing this one over here say, man, I'd like to get better at this. And I hear somebody over here explaining how they do it, and I'm going, they're doing a great job. I don't have to teach anybody anything. Let's put these two guys in the same room, these two people in the same room, and let them just hash it out and talk it out. And they actually came out with 4 or 5 takeaways that we've been implementing since we did our seminar. I must have been about just over a month ago, that were ideas that they came together and decided on. And that's kind of cool. They're self-leading because they're bought into what they're doing in their ministry and want to do it well. It's just creating that space for them to work out those things. And as well, I think it's important to in these settings not just be dumping new content and procedures on people and training for new stuff. So we always try to have a healthy dose of an exhortational type comment and trying to encourage people toward faithfulness and help reinforce. Pastor Doran did a session, this last one, where he talked about the types of people that he remembers from when he was involved in children's ministry as a child.
Yeah.
And just talking, and that's the kind of stuff that helps you go, this goes beyond just completing our schedule and getting through our curriculum. We are trying to impact the lives of these kids for the sake of Christ, and just trying to exhort people and encourage them to faithfulness in that area.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what about the format of the event itself? This sounds like a lot to pack into however much time. So how'd you do that?
Yeah, I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. We actually built our format the first time based on what we wanted to cover. And it worked pretty well to keep it the same for the second time. But full disclosure, when I'm starting to think ahead to next year, I think our content may be different enough that we change the format. But I'll walk you through what we did,
Sure.
just to give you an idea of how that looked. We started with the breakfast because we're doing it on a Saturday morning, so we're trying to dangle a carrot a little bit there to help get people there. Really, if we're going to start at 9 in the morning, we can do a soft start at 8:30 to bring people in the door, have the coffee there for them, and all that they need to get rolling.
And a breakfast provides a nice spot for. I mean, because all these classes are broken up, right? So the person serving as a volunteer in 5th grade Sunday school may not know who teaches 1st grade Sunday school,
right?
Or who serves in this like toddler class or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's a nice time for people to just because you don't get that on a week to week basis.
Yeah, and they might see each other in the lobby at church,
right?
But we are putting them in a context that everybody's thinking about children's ministry,
exactly,
with some time to kind of talk through those things. So I think it's a good point. Good. Yeah, and so what we did is we started with that breakfast, and then we had 4 30-minute sessions. All right, so think about our time slot here. We went from 8:30 to noon. A 30-minute breakfast only gets you to 9. 4 30-minute sessions only gets you to 11. So what we did is between every session, we actually had a 15-minute break for the reason you were just talking about. Yeah. Rather than just we're going from one topic to the next, to the next, to the next, we kept our refreshments out in the lobby, and as people had a chance to go out and grab some snacks, they could talk and debrief or ask questions about the sessions that had been before that. So we tried to put some breathing room between the sessions in that way. So 4 30-minute sessions, each separated by 15 minutes. As we've needed, we've done breakout sessions as well.
Okay.
So I'll try to think through why we did that this last time out loud here. So this last time, I talked about the Move Up Sunday change a minute ago and how we were going to change that. Well, that only affected really the elementary Sunday school teachers. So I can't put everybody in the room for the sake of 10 or 15 that need to hear that. So that's the slot that we used for the preschool teachers to be able to have their brainstorming session, because that only affected them. And so we tried to think, what are some specific topics that affect smaller groups, and then kind of package those in breakout sessions with different leaders so that we could get specific on some things without, boring everybody with stuff that didn't pertain to them.
Sure.
So I think part of that's just a jigsaw puzzle, what needs to be covered, and then fitting your sessions to match that content.
Right. Everyone's needs may look a little bit different, but you just don't want someone sitting through a session and wasting their time. You want to use the time efficiently.
That is a absolute, you can't do that. Like if you invite people out on a Saturday morning for a 3.5 hour slot, the reality of it is if they come to your seminar, they're not doing something else.
Right.
And if they come once and they go, wow, half of that was totally unnecessary, or the old, that could have been an email type thing.
Right. Sure.
Then you're not going to be able to get them to come another time.
Right.
Or when they come, their sites they'll be expecting less, and you know how it is. If you go somewhere expecting not to get good content, you're less likely to latch onto the content that you hear.
Right.
So I really think that's an important part is if you're going to do one of these, don't just put it on the calendar because it's something you do. Yeah. You really need to make it worth people's time and have something to give them that is going to be meaningful to their ministry if you're going to do it in the first place.
Yeah. So speaking of it being worth their time, what about worth your time? So obviously it sounds like there's a lot of planning that goes into it. There's logistics. I know there were other volunteers who helped just with the logistics of putting the thing on. Is it, when you're coming away from it and you're thinking about it, you feel like it was worth the effort that got put into it?
I really do think so. I could point to specific projects and things that are moving forward in our children's ministry that were part of it is you're preparing these things, So our seminar this last time was on March 15th. Well, the prep for what was going to go into those sessions and the new initiatives and things we were going to roll out started weeks before that, because you can't really announce something and say, we're going to do this and then not have a plan. So you have to build your plan in advance, and then now you have a chance to carry it out while everybody's on the same page. So in that way, I think doing this gives you something to aim at moving forward. Like if I know I'm going to be having a seminar on March 15th, I actually have to work pretty hard to have good content to deliver on March 15th. Mm-hmm. All right, so that gives you sort of that accountability in your calendar to say, I'm going to have everybody in our ministry here, and I need to work toward having progress to show them or something to hand them that's going to be helpful for them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good just to put something on your calendar. This is we're working towards something. I've brought this up. I think just having an opportunity to communicate to everyone at once is absolute gold. I can talk to a Sunday school teacher before a class starts, but I don't get any other opportunity during the year to talk to everybody. It never happens. You know, I can send an email, but we all know how that goes, right? So it's, if I actually want to have an opportunity to talk to everybody, I've got to put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
And that gives you a chance to zoom out to big picture things like philosophy, or to challenge them about the value of what they're doing in children's ministry. Because you know how it can be. You can get into teaching the same class over and over. And for some of these people, they've been through this curriculum numerous times.
Right.
And it can just become a habit. And we don't want it to be that.
Right.
We want this to be something that people are giving their all in service for Christ and investing in these kids. Yeah. So having that opportunity once a year to sort of give the shot in the arm is hugely valuable.
Yeah, you mentioned the once a year thing. When you were talking about having everybody together, I was going to ask a follow-up question about, do you think you'll make this a yearly thing? Because I could see somebody saying, and I'm sure this happened with our seminar, not everybody shows up.
Right.
You know, so if it's just a one and done thing, you don't have the opportunity to kind of have that reoccurring. I don't know if you've thought about that at all.
Yeah, and I think some of it, you know, it's the calendar. Like this year I had an oversight and wound up putting this thing in the middle of playoff basketball season around Inner City.
Yeah,
that's a busy week.
That's a big no-no.
Yeah. And so we really probably lost some people that might have otherwise been able to come.
Yeah.
Because basketball it pulls people in lots of ways. Their kids are playing, their grandkids are playing, whatever, that kind of stuff. It just turns out there was a rec league for the younger kids that's not even related to inner city school that was going on the same week. So, you know, know your calendar. There's a note for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some of that is going to be, you're not going to get everybody there every time, which creates a challenge, because if you do something foundational, like a philosophy of children's ministry in the first one, and then you go, wow, there's 20 people who are going to be here this time that weren't here last time, you kind of want to do it again. Mm-hmm. So you've got to work through like what's important to be covered. And really, both of the ones we've done so far, the topics that were addressed came out of just meeting with people one-on-one and hearing what was going on at the ground level, boots on the ground. Moving forward, I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like. I think I want to do something every year, but if we don't have a ton of new processes to introduce or new tools to introduce, it's going to look different.
Sure.
You know, where 2 or 3 sessions of one seminar might be, hey, look, here's a new way we're going to go about scheduling. Here's a new way we're going to go about Move Up Sunday. Here's a prayer time we're going to introduce before Sunday school. Once those things have been introduced, they don't need to be introduced again. So will we have 4 sessions next time? Will they be 30 minutes? Will we do breakouts? I think all of that's probably going to be somewhat dictated by the observations that I make throughout the year as far as what's going well and may need to be emphasized. Observations that other people make that as I talk to them are coming to my attention. Or if we want to go the other way, observations that my boss, Pastor Doran, has made that he's bringing to my attention. But we still have, 10, 11 months for those types of things to develop.
Right.
And then we'll build a seminar based on what needs to be addressed next year.
Right. Yeah. How do you think it was perceived by the people attending it? Do you think they thought, this is worth my time? I mean, it shows the ministry I'm in is they're committed to improving, that sort of thing. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd like to think that it went pretty well along those lines.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm probably one of the...
Wouldn't we all, right?
Yes, we'd all love to think that the thing that we do worked well. But a lot of people gave feedback. Good. And it's the kind of thing that, somebody says thanks, that's one thing. But when somebody says, wow, this really helped in this way, that's the kind of stuff you latch onto and say, maybe it actually did make a difference. Right. And there's been feedback like that. But I do think that the thing you brought up there at the end, the idea of being committed to improving, just doing something like this, I think shows that we're not okay with coasting, that we want to keep elevating the way that we go about our children's ministry. And I do think, at least I hope, that's the kind of thing that can be contagious, that as leaders are putting a priority on improving, then the people that are actually carrying out those ministries then hopefully catch that bug too, and they work on improving.
Yeah, it's a culture thing. I mean, even when you're talking about the foundational philosophy kind of stuff, as more people buy into it, more people will buy into it, right? So, and it becomes, maybe I didn't hear that session, but I get to pick it up from the other people around me. And if you build a culture of people who are on target, on mission, this can really help to push that forward and move forward with that.
Obviously, I'm 2 years in. Here's the hope. Right?
Yeah, we're hoping, but yeah, that's the idea. So as people are listening to this, they may be thinking, this sounds like something I might want to do at our church. Any ideas and advice for other people thinking about this type of thing and how they could plan and execute it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that I would say is that experience of talking to the people who are doing the ministry is sort of a non-negotiable to me at this point. You got to know what they're thinking if you're going to be able to help them, I think. It's certainly, I guess I haven't tried other things, but as far as my experience, that has been a great way to sort of curate what is going to be presented at these seminars. But as far as carrying it out, once you sort of know where you're headed, it's always been helpful to me to just try to isolate different elements of these things and then think through each one of those thoroughly. So, content I've been talking about, but even speakers, right? Maybe you as the pastor are going to be the one that does all the sessions. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're the best one for it. Maybe there could be somebody else who would be great for it. So really thinking through the content and speakers, where you're going to do the sessions, kind of that session-y stuff is one silo for me that I'm trying to think about. But then, you want to maybe try to show people the importance of this. And I've got a lady in the church who is incredibly helpful for me on this front. Just when it comes to the setting and the decorations and making it look welcoming. I was walking in on the Saturday morning of our session and I'm seeing these balloon arches and all these tablecloths and everything. And it just occurred to me, I haven't really had to think about this at all. Tracy's just carrying the load on that, but it really does help as people walk in the door and go, wow, this is actually something they're putting a premium on. This actually matters. They're going all out for this. I think it helps even the speakers have a leg up. It comes time to give sessions because people, I guess the atmosphere is pulling them in.
And people walk into our building, at least our church members. I mean, they walk into the building every week. They know what it looks like. Right. It kind of helps get them off their game a little bit.
Yeah, shake them up, I guess. That's what we want. Right.
Yeah.
I think, too, you got to really think through your guest list and who's going to come and how you're going to collect RSVPs. So for us, obviously there's 100 and some odd people. So I'm really making sure you don't leave somebody off that invitation list. That's not good. And then thinking like, how early should I be communicating to them so that I can get RSVPs? I think there's a sweet spot. Too early, they're not thinking that far ahead on their calendar. Too late, there's already something on their calendar. Maybe let's call it 3 to 5 weeks seems to be our sweet spot. All right. So that's something to think through for your church culture as well. And then how you're going to collect those RSVPs and know who's going to be there is going to change your setup. It's going to affect everything. I talked about food. We did a breakfast and then refreshments and those 15-minute breaks. So that's another silo for me. What are we going to do on the food side? Props to Tracy. She pulled that off as well. And then I think too, as you plan where that seminar is going to fit within your church calendar as a whole, I think you want to put it in a place where you'll have an opportunity to take action on the things you talk about. So for us, you're right in the middle of the spring, it was a great spot. It seems to be an open spot on the calendar. People might be able to attend. And then there's a couple months, March, April, May, before the end of the school year, where children's ministries are kind of in their swing. The midweek ministries have been going all school year. The kids have been in their new Sunday school classes for most of the year. And so there's not a whole lot of maintenance that's needed on those things. And it gives an opportunity for implementation of the new stuff. Right. And so if you're going to be putting new stuff in, we'll schedule that seminar in a place that you're going to have some bandwidth to be able to implement that new stuff. Yeah. I think that's another thing that's helpful. And then one other thing that I'd bring up too, and this would relate kind of directly to the conversation we've been having. What do you do if you have a philosophy session and people weren't there for it? Well, you record it. Yeah. We have that opportunity. You can do that on your cell phone. You can, whatever setup you want, record it. And so we actually did. We recorded our philosophy of children's ministry session from the first one. And now that's part of the process for anybody that applies to work in children's ministry. It's onboarding. They're going to watch that video. And as we're collecting these different videos from these seminars, we'll be able to catch people up to speed or target people going into new ministries with particular content that we think would be helpful for them. So it's not like you do it once and, okay, well, maybe in 10 years we'll get back to that content. You can really be building a library of these things that you can use to get people up to speed.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful. Thanks, Riley, for coming on the podcast today and helping everybody think through kids training and kids ministry seminars. So, Thank you for listening to Theologically Driven. We're a podcast of Detroit Baptist Theological Seminary. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, just go to dbts.edu.